next guest, our next speaker is Marcelo, who I've only met a couple times. He is a PCC student currently, and he's going to talk to us today about ayahuasca and visionary states and how those relate to cosmic love. Let's welcome Marcelo.
Okay, hello everybody. Okay, so let's begin with these two quotations, and then we're going to move to a more symbolic form of presentation. First of all, I want to address these two quotes. Please take your time to read it. I'm not going to read it with you because it's a matter of time. But both are saying that the problem we have today, the ecological problem, is a matter of the heart and not the head. And it demands a response from the heart. So we are here to talk about love. I'm here to talk a little bit about ayahuasca. But before that, I think it's crucial that we start talking about this little guy here. This, okay. All right. Are you listening to me? It's good now. Okay. So this is the mind. We can also say that this is kind of a mirror because we are here gathered as minds, examining the mind itself. The mind is a fabulous place to be. We can, we can play around with the mind, and we can start getting really good at it, as you can see here. We can develop more and more, and can start creating beautiful things with our minds, such as this little guy here. Amazing. We can even dress our minds, with these beautiful, outstanding outfits, like this one here. It looks kind of a mystical thing. Other guys prefer to dress their minds with a more technological approach, like this one here. And there's even people who like to dress their minds with, not so good outfits, ones that look more, on the dark side. But we can never forget that this is all about the mind. We do business with our minds. We can do psychology with our minds as well, even astrology here, physics, and philosophy. Here we are. The mind is everywhere. We are populating the world with our minds. This is the world of the mind. And but if we zoom out a little bit, we're going to see that all this apparent mass that we see here, it's actually framed within the mind itself. The limits, the borders of the cube are very well set. Even though we are all these little cubes here talking different languages, trying to communicate to each other, we are all talking the language of the mind. So here we are. Of course, there are some people who really think that the mind is the only place to be, right? We're talking about materialism here. And I saw this discussion on the PCC chat about species reengineering, and transhumanism. And it all comes to seeing the mind as the only game in town. Because if consciousness is generated by our brains, the mind is really the only game in town. And I think that this picture here talks a lot about the whole transhumanistic debate. If we can only crack the code, the cosmos is going to be ours. We're kind of gods. So this is, how far do you want to go, deep in the rabbit hole? That's the mind game. So enough of the mind. Let's, okay, let me go a little bit further with it. So we just know that where it's standing at. So how did it get here? How do we become captives inside our heads? Here I'm taking a quote from Otto Scharmer. He's an MIT professor. Very, very interesting book, Theory U. When operating from the place of downloading, that is, from within the closed boundaries of our own organization, we're captured in our own world like a prisoner in a cell. There's no way out. We see only the mental constructs that we project onto the world. So this is saying a lot. Here we are, captives in our brains. We can also think about the epistemological Kantian Cartesian box. Readers of Tarnas know what I'm talking about. And it all starts from compartmentalizing the mind. You know, we start reducing it and creating like these different compartments in which we can fit all our knowledge. You know, we can add like mathematics, and it can get really complex here. And we're finally looking for like, you know, the building blocks of existence. They, you know, like this essence that is equal to every one of us, the one thing, which Bortov calls unity in multiplicity. So we are many here, but there has to be a single thing that we can just extract, right? The atoms or whatever, the quarks, now the boson, the Higgs boson, it goes on and on. But it ended up creating people like this, us, you know. This is pretty much the story of the 20th century, I think, trying to create this unity in multiplicity, try to level us all down to these rules that apply to everybody. And this is what Sharma calls the downloading mode. It's I in me. So you can see here, usually this is how we talk when we meet each other, you know, in the house here, talking nice, polite routines, empty phrases. It's an autistic system. We speak from what the others want to hear, and we are very here in the center of our own organization. Now, if you pay attention to this image again, and you can see that little dude over there, right here, this one, he has a different vision of what's going on. He say, hey, wait a minute, you know, this is just not right. So this guy is in a different level. It's a deeper stage of being. It's I in it. So he moved to the periphery of his organization, and now he's engaged into debate. So talking tough, you know, arguments and divergent views. This adaptive system would be pretty much how I would define academia in general. This is where we are now. Of course, PCC and CIS is different here. We are moving to the third level, which is when we start to realize that we are part of a whole, that we are actually, we have different peoples inhabiting this mind here, different sorts. But this guy here can understand that other one over there. So we understand differences here. So there's, you know, racial, gender, whatever you come up with. These are all acknowledged here. And when you start listening to the other one, we enter to this third phase, which is dialogue. And I know that there was a group discussion about David Bohm trying to engage into dialogue. I think this is amazing that it's happening here, and it shows that it's something that we haven't mastered yet. So there's a demand for entering into dialogue, which is not usually the way we understand, we communicate with each other. From here, we're speaking from seeing myself as part of the whole. Okay? This is dialogue. And you can see that the mind now starts looking a little bit different. It gets more difficult to see it, to perceive it as a cube. And it starts, you know, our perception shifts. We can see other things coming out from this image here. And this is where I'm getting to, perception. Perception isn't passive, but it's an activity that the body enacts. So now we are stepping a little bit out of the mind issue. And I'm quoting from Steiner here. The desire lives in the evolving human being, a desire to find some kind of connection with the world, not only through the head, but through the rest of the organism. To learn to think not only with the head, with our whole organism. To learn to experience the world with every part of us, and not only the head. Here we are. Second important thing, that the blind spot of contemporary science is experience. This is very important. I'm quoting Francisco Varela here. The problem is not that we don't know enough about the brain or about biology. We do know. The problem is that we don't know enough about experience. We have a blind spot in the West for that kind of methodical approach. Everybody thinks they know about experience. I claim we don't, and I agree with him. Now, this is, so what science knows then? This is going to happen right now. We are a couple of weeks from this Tower of the Science of Consciousness. This is going to be an event that is going to happen in Tucson, Arizona. And this is what science, they're talking about consciousness, right? This is like very avant-garde thing. But this is what science is bringing to us. Perceptronium, connectome, these are amazing terminologies. But we understand that these are all abstractions. They are nothing but abstractions. And we cannot leave the cave or the cube or the mind by downloading abstract thought. If you try to come up with this very smart escape plan that you can see here, trying to escape the cube, you're just going to end up inside another cube. So every thought is a cage from the mind's perspective. It's really hard to get out of it. But of course, we can see that science usually it dwells here in these two levels, downloading and debating. Of course, there's a lot of things happening. Guys like Rupert Sheldrake and others are trying to bring the third, dialogue perspective to traditional science, creating bridges to spiritual traditions and so forth. But the real thing here, and this is where I'm getting to ayahuasca, is that unless we rediscover our senses as gateways to the living field around us, we will never resolve the environmental crisis or any other kind of crisis. So we have to learn how to communicate outside of our minds. Here goes, the heart. So what is the heart? According to the Homeric Greeks, intelligence didn't come from the silent brain, but it was, it was seen in the speech, the voice, and the chest. It was located here. And I think it's a very good way of, because we learn to think that the heart is kind of a pump, right? This mechanical thing that is pumping blood through all our body. And if we go back to Steiner or others, you're going to understand that the heart is more like this. It's a yogic center point. It's not about sentimentality. It's not about emotionality. But it's an ever-expanding, all-embracing. It just wants to be with you and with everyone. And Steiner has another very interesting idea about the heart. He says that the heart actually is not a primary form, but it is the result of the circulation. And the circulation, it gets to a standpoint where it goes through a metamorphosis, and then it goes on, proceeds in a different way. So if you keep that idea in mind and you use our imagination, we can start to understand the heart not as emotionality, not as a pump, but as something like this. I think it has a lot to do with what Elizabeth was talking before, the flow. Flow is an energy, it's intelligence. There is, the cosmic intelligence is in the flow. And that's where the heart intelligence comes from. Steiner again, I'm sorry, I'm a big, huge fan of Steiner. And I love this little story here, that the plant gathers the secrets of the universe and sends them into the ground. And the gnomes absorb these secrets into themselves for what percolates down to them spiritually through the plants. These gnomes have immediate understanding of what they see. The thoughts are already there for them. It's very different from the way we use the mind to achieve knowledge. The ideas flow through the plants. Why, they think? Don't people stick their noses into the earth, down to the depths of the plant roots, and let what the sun says to the plants percolate down into their noses? Then they would know something. So indigenous people in the Amazon, they understand this flow, and they live totally immersed in that. They're embedded in this deeper intelligence. I'm almost there, thank you. As you can see here, this whole field is speaking to them. And of course, it's not the mind or the brain that is bringing that connection. And when we talk about ayahuasca, I think it's really funny that these two plants here, as you can see, we are talking first about psychedelics, and I ask you, if psychedelic is that which manifests the mind, I totally reject this definition. Ayahuasca is not a psychedelic. Some people may call it an entheogen. It's getting more popular these days. I also reject this terminology because I think that entheogen, it kind of brings us to the idea that Ken Wilber would call the divine egoism. It has a kind of a narcissistic quality about that. I really like to call ayahuasca plant medicine, but I've just borrowed a definition from a professor, from a Penn State professor, Richard Doyle, that calls that ayahuasca and other plant medicines, they would be nice to be called ecodelics. They manifest the ecology and not the mind. Anyway, I think it's really funny also that we are trying to reduce ayahuasca. So we go back here. We're trying to crack the code. And in the last few years, there's been lots of documentaries talking about that. Many scientists are studying this issue. And they're trying to come up. Rick Strassman got really popular, and there's the film DMT Spirit Molecule. Again, we go back to reductionism, trying to reduce what is, to begin with, a relationship between two different plants to just one molecule that is the kind of magic pill. And if you see indigenous people, they don't stick their noses in the dirt like the gnome suggested, but they do something similar while they're cooking the plant, while they're gathering the leaves, while they're doing it all. They're engaging into a movement which is a relationship with the environment and with their people. So the very process of cooking ayahuasca is very different from chemistry and just, you know, getting with the spirit molecule. If any of you have ever smoked DMT, it can be a crazy, marvelous experience full of visuals, but there's no healing quality in smoking DMT by itself. DMT has nothing to do with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a community of beings that work on us. And the process starts very much with the cooking, with the gathering of the leaves. The spirits are all infused into this happening. So drinking it is a sacred thing. It's a sacred ceremony. You're communing with the spirits of nature, with this greater mind, the mind of the heart. And what it does, again, it gets us to confront our minds. So it's going to clean, you know, I heard people talking about why don't we create like a pharmahuasca pill. Dennis McKenna talked about that once when I met him. And it would be great, you know, people wouldn't purge, you know, getting sick wouldn't be a problem anymore. We just go straight to what matters. But that's not what matters. Actually, the purge is the most important thing because that's what it's doing. It's cleansing our body, and it's not only cleansing our body from physical toxins, but it's also cleansing our body from the grip of the mind. So we can actually start to sense the world and to think with our hearts and with the full of our bodies. So after the purging process is finished, we can actually see, think, and be with the heart. And this is what, here another very important aspect, the ceremony. Again, ayahuasca is a happening. It's not a substance, it's not a molecule. It's a happening. When you do ceremony, you're creating community. You're engaging into conversation with other people, not from downloading, not from debating. I'll get back here. But from this fourth field here, which is what Charmer calls presencing. So now you are perceiving the world. You're getting everything from the field around you, not from the center of your organization, not from the periphery, not from relating to another one, but from the whole field. It's speaking from what is moving through. So this intelligence is moving through. It's a generative system. And really funny thing is that I'm using Charmer as a model for me to explain ayahuasca, but I don't think he ever tried it. But he does many workshops for leadership, and he engages into all these processes, which is, again, about experience that we were talking about before. And this is what happens. Instead of expressing opinions and making statements, after this process, people started to ask genuine questions. They were not just talking together, they were thinking together. Time seemed to slow down. Space around us seemed to thicken and open up. People talked more slowly, punctuated by silence. The structure of how people related to one another had changed. Something had moved them beyond the usual state where people argue as separate individuals, as captives inside their own brains. And this is pretty much what I have experienced in my 15 years of working with ayahuasca. You know, after the ceremony, we always have, if you're doing it with good people that know their work, we have the sharing circle, which is also one of the most important aspects of it. And so here we have the 4 levels of communication. I would say that the first 3 are pretty much focused on the mind. The 4th one transcends the mind, and we speak from the heart. We feel the field. And I'll finish with this quotation here. Peter Senge, also from MIT, he approached Master Nan, a Zen monk from China. Do you think that the industrial age will create such environmental problems that we will destroy ourselves and that we must find a way to understand these problems and change industrial institutions? That's the Western approach. That's how we ask questions. Master Nan paused, shook his head in response. He didn't completely agree with that. It wasn't the way he saw it. He saw it at a deeper level, and he said, there's only one issue in the world. It's the reintegration of matter and mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are pushing the envelope a little bit, but if anyone has a quick question for Marcelo, or is it Marcello? I'm sorry.
Marcelo.
Yeah. Marcelo. Let it fly.
Yeah.
Regarding the science of DMT, this is something. Is this mic on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Something I've thought about. Like the way I conceptualize it and feel it is that humanity has been in relationship with nature for a very long time, and perhaps we're at the point of our relationship where it's about to go across that threshold of deeper intimacy, where we're exploring the organic nature of DMT to see what else we might create, such as the metaphor of a man and woman creating something entirely new, either relationship of child. What do you feel about that, as far as like a possibility that our science of DMT could lead to something far greater even than what DMT naturally operates?
Like I said, I think that the focus that modern science gives to DMT is kind of a symptom of a Western problem, which is this approach from the mind. DMT is the molecule that acts. You're going to study it, you're going to know that it acts in the brain, right? It's the synapses and all that. And so scientists are just trying to isolate everything else and saying the harmalines, and whatever they are, the molecular components. I'm not a chemical, I don't understand much about that. But they're trying to isolate, again, to a compound, a molecule, right? The spirit molecule, the magic pill. It's really funny because I see modern science as the most religious of all religions, because they are the ones who are looking for this is the salvation, right? If we can only proceed a little further, if we can only crack the code, if we can only get there, give us a little bit more time, we're going to solve all the world's problems, because, this is what's happening. This is the perceptronium, this is the connectome, DMT. We're focused on the mind, and especially in the West, we like the whole idea about having visions. Wow, I want to transcend to that other place. But after you take ayahuasca for a long time, you don't have many visions. I don't have many visions. We are all connected in the field, and we're just paying attention to what is happening in the field. So we are there for other people. And, there's like a flow of energy among people. When one starts vomiting, it triggers a sequence, and others starts doing the same, because there's an energy going on. And I've seen, healers treating people that were feeling really sick. There was this lady, she was like throwing up a lot, and this guy never vomits, right? He never does that. And he was there, and he touched her, and he was like doing all his shamanic, ceremony. And then he had to run and puke, because, the energy was transferred. He was really catching this thing that is in the air. So I think these are the things that we have to pay more attention to. I wouldn't even say that it's important to think about ayahuasca itself, but it's an event. And the event happens with people participating in it, having a facilitator, having a sacred container that holds the energy. Before that, you make your intentions. You know that you're getting into a sacred space. And I think this is all more important than focusing on DMT alone.
All right, thank you, Marcelo.
All right, thank you.
Gonna have to leave.